Iran's Revolutionary Guard says 3 U.S. and British tankers are on fire after it struck them with missiles. Earlier, shipping giant Maersk announced it is pausing sailings through the Bab el-Mandab Strait and the Suez Canal as well, in addition to the Strait of Hormuz. That's a crucial sea passage for oil and gas shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, and they're already affected. At its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz is about 33 kilometers wide, but its shipping lanes are even narrower. Iran controls the north side of the strait, while Oman controls the south. An estimated 20% of the world's oil is transported through the waterway. China takes the vast majority of Iran's crude exports. Around 45% of its total crude imports transit the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar also depends heavily on the strait to export its liquefied natural gas. 83% of the LNG that passes through the strait heads to Asia, including China. Even Australia could be affected. Around 30% of its refined oil effectively passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Closing it could potentially remove more than 17 billion barrels of oil from the global market, driving up prices and straining energy supplies. Well, joining us now to discuss these latest developments on Al Jazeera is Sheikha Alanoud Hamad Saud Thani. She's a political analyst, a Georgetown University alumni, and a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us. So the Gulf states are now caught in this crossfire of rival actors, paying really the price of conflicts not of their making. First of all, did they ever anticipate that the Iranian response would be so quick and so wide?
Thank you for that question. So quick, maybe, but so wide, I think no one really anticipated that such a thing would happen. And unanticipated does not necessarily mean unprepared. I mean, we've seen the response, all the Gulf states were quite prepared for it. However, if we look at the attack that happened from Israel on Iran, we see that they had 3 main objectives. The first was the leadership, the second was the infrastructure, but the third, they needed Iran to play into it for them to achieve that objective, and that objective was to bring the entire region into this meat grinder. And it's quite unbelievable for everyone that Iran would walk face first, eyes wide open into such a trap.
Right. So when you say they were clearly prepared, even though the attack was wide and perhaps not expected to be that wide. In the case of Qatar, it successfully thwarted dozens of Iranian missiles. But how long can it continue to do this? How long can Gulf states continue to push back with their air defenses? Is this sustainable?
So sustainable, the Gulf states have great relations with very many security partners. So there is no worry from that side. But sustainable, we also have to think about the economy, and we have to think about the people and regional stability. No one wants this to go on any longer than yesterday, not even at all. And so I have all the confidence that they are able to thwart these attacks. However, should they have to? No, they shouldn't.
Okay, well, which brings me to my next question, because many Gulf countries have said they reserve the right to respond to Iran. But how can they respond today seriously without further escalating an already dangerous situation? When they say they have the right to respond, is that just lip service for now, or are there considerations now being made to respond to Iran?
So I wouldn't call it lip service, but I think statecraft requires to keep all your options open. Of course, the Gulf states want to take the way of peace and be a peace partner in the region for all of the partners that are in the region. And that is why we went out of our way to make sure that nothing is going through any of our airspace, that we basically were not a threat to anyone.
Right.
And yet we still faced such consequences. We want to take the way out of peace. Even until now, we heard the comments from multiple heads of state. We want to take the way out of peace, but if we are left with no option, then we are left with no option.
And what is that? What would be a red line for a country like Qatar?
So a red line, I think, insofar as a country like Qatar or any of the other GCC countries, I mean, we've seen civilian infrastructure is being targeted everywhere. We were told by the Iranian leadership that only U.S. military bases, but even here in Qatar, we've seen strikes in the north, strikes in the south, and today the only reason why we're not hearing these noises and feeling the ground shake is because the fighter jets are out there intercepting over the Gulf Sea. So what's going to be the red line? I think that we have a lot of wisdom here in this region, which is much needed. I think a lot of actors in this region can learn a little bit from the wisdom of some of the GCC countries in the way that they are responding. I think they will choose patience for as long as they possibly can.
You talk about wisdom. Will that mean, perhaps in the future, that Gulf states, including Qatar, which hosts the largest US base in the region, will be reconsidering the presence of these bases on their soil? Or is that not being discussed at the moment?
I'm so happy you asked that question. So I don't think wisdom means being strong-armed by any state. I mean, Israel tried to do this just a couple of months ago. And they set a precedent now in the region where mediators like Oman are also getting attacked, which is why we said straight out of the get-go, we should not be setting these precedents in this region or any other region. But it is not wisdom to allow states to strong-arm and bully you into giving up your sovereignty.
Right. Just briefly, Qatar was also a mediator, of course, in these talks, and Qatar has had very good relations with Iran. We, of course, remember that the Iranians stood by Qatar during the blockade back in 2017. Where does this leave relations today between Qatar and Iran?
So Qatar will always, whenever there's even the smallest opening, will always choose the path of peace and rebuilding insofar that we can. However, the operative word here is can. And so the other side as well needs to be reasonable, needs to find reason, and needs to stop these attacks that are just, without any direction or purpose. They're just all over the place.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on Al
Thank you for
Jazeera.
having
Sheikha
me.
Alanoud, Hamad, Saud, Thani, joining us here on the set in Doha.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.